Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to my channel Fearful Horror Stories and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the chilling tales we share. Now, let's dive into tonight's story. Welcome to Fearful Horror Stories. Tonight, we venture deep into the shadowy expanse of Oregon's forests, where the mist clings to trees like cold fingers, and every step could reveal something waiting, something watching. The wind whispers secrets through the branches, secrets that the light of day refuses to reveal. It's easy to imagine the calm and beauty, the serenity of these woods. But peace is deceptive, and tonight, that deception will become apparent. The trail was familiar to the ranger, paths he had walked countless times, each step measured, each sound cataloged. But tonight, there was a subtle wrongness in the air. The usual chorus of nocturnal life, the rustling of raccoons, the hoots of distant owls, the sigh of the wind through the pines. All were absent, replaced by an eerie stillness that pressed down on him. His boots crunched over dry leaves and broken twigs, a hollow echo that seemed louder than it should, each noise betraying his presence to unseen eyes. He paused, every nerve alert, searching for what the forest refused to disclose. As he ventured deeper, shadows stretched unnaturally, elongated and twisting in ways that made the trees themselves appear alive. Shapes seemed to flicker just beyond vision, vanishing when he dared to focus. A low murmur of sound, barely perceptible at first, began to weave around him, a whisper carried by the wind, or was it the wind itself? The sound turned to movement. A fleeting shadow darted between the trunks, and the feeling of being watched sharpened into a tangible pressure, pressing against his chest like invisible hands. Suddenly, a scream erupted from somewhere ahead. Raw, primal, and desperate, it tore through the calm, echoing off unseen cliffs, bouncing between trees like an unanswered question. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to flee. Yet something compelled him forward, a mixture of duty, curiosity, and dread. The forest's hush had been broken, but instead of relief, the void it left seemed to consume all hope of understanding. Heart pounding, he stumbled over roots, the ground uneven, his breathing ragged. The air itself felt heavier, almost viscous, as if each inhalation required effort beyond reason. Finally, he came upon a clearing. The remnants of a campsite lay scattered, a fire long dead except for smoldering embers that glowed weakly in the dark. Tents were ripped, fabric flapping in a windless night. Personal belongings, backpacks, water bottles, lanterns lay abandoned, strewn haphazardly. It was a scene of absence, a void where people should have been. The silence that followed the scream was suffocating. Nothing stirred except the wind, which now carried a faint metallic tang, like blood mingled with rusting earth. The forest had swallowed its inhabitants whole, leaving only questions and the sense of an unseen audience. The ranger's eyes scanned the perimeter, catching glimpses of movement that vanished before recognition. Shapes crouched in shadows, fleeting glimpses of figures that should not exist. The hairs on the back of his neck rose. Instinct screamed at him, warning of unseen dangers, of predators not bound by flesh and blood. He felt the forest pressing in, alive in ways impossible to understand. Every tree, every branch, every whispering leaf seemed part of grand design, orchestrating a narrative that only he could witness. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, following him, echoed his own pace. He froze, listening. Silence, and then the sound again, a mirrored step, exactly timed. The hairs on his arms bristled. Something moved with him, mimicking, observing. A sudden glimpse through a break in the trees revealed a pale, indistinct figure. Eyes reflected firelight like dying embers. It stood motionless, yet its presence radiated intent. When he blinked, it was gone. The forest had claimed it again, as if reality bent to conceal what was never meant to be seen. The ground underfoot changed, soil softening into mud, roots twisting to ensnare him. Panic, creeping steadily, threatened to overwhelm rational thought. Every instinct screamed escape, yet feet moved mechanically, compelled forward by something deeper than fear, deeper than reason. And then the whisper came, distinct, almost human, echoing in the mind rather than the ears. Leave before it is too late. The voice had no origin, no source, yet carried weight and urgency. The forest had spoken, and the warning, no chilling, only deepened compulsion to uncover the truth behind the unseen. Ahead, the mist thickened, rolling through the trees in opaque waves. Shadows pulled in unnatural forms, like smoke freezing midair. Shapes emerged, impossible angles, twisted and malformed, fleeting glimpses that challenged comprehension. Branches reached down like hands, snagging jackets, scratching skin, tugging subtly as if testing boundaries. Each step forward was a negotiation with the unknown, a delicate dance between courage and madness. The ranger felt the world tilting, the laws of reality stretching thin, moments slipping into one another with impossible elasticity. Time itself seemed uncertain, distorted by the presence of something ancient, something that observed without eyes, that waited without breath. In the center of the clearing, he found remnants of ritual, stones arranged in patterns that defied geometry, circles within circles, etched into the soil as though the earth had been coaxed into complicity. Symbols carved crudely, burned with residual energy that tingled against the skin, a magnetic pull that demanded attention. He stepped closer, a single footfall breaking the silence, and felt a cold shock surge up his spine. The forest exhaled around him, carrying the scent of decay, of something long dead yet persistently aware. He realized then that the scream, the figures, the emptiness, all were threads of a tapestry he was not meant to unravel, but unravel he must. He fled, heart hammering, lungs burning, and yet glimpses of the impossible continued to haunt every glance. Branches curled in forms that no natural tree should take. Eyes blinked from hollows where none should exist. The forest breathed, a living entity beyond comprehension, acknowledging his presence while withholding understanding. The ranger broke through the tree-line as dawn approached, sunlight cutting through mist, yet the memory of the night lingered like a shadow refusing to fade. Questions without answers, visions without explanation, and the persistent echo of that scream, raw, urgent, unsolved, followed him into the waking world. Even now, years later, the forest calls him in dreams. Mist curling around unseen forms, whispers of leaves and shadows, figures frozen in the periphery of vision, screaming in silence. Reality bends in recollection, truth and fiction intertwining, yet the fear remains pure, tangible. The ranger understands now that the forest does not merely contain life. It holds the impossible, the unfathomable, the eternally watching. Each night he returns in memory, retracing steps, seeking closure, yet finding none. The woods are patient, indifferent, and infinitely aware. The memory of the forest shadows lingered like a stain across the ranger's mind. Though he had escaped physically, the experience had marked him in ways subtle yet profound. Each night, the wind's whisper recalled shapes that moved just beyond perception, and every rustle of leaves carried a memory of the unseen eyes that had followed him. The forest had a rhythm, a pulse, a consciousness that defied explanation. To the untrained observer, it was simply night sounds, shadows, and mist, but he knew differently. Weeks later, duty called him back to the region. A lost hiker, report said, had gone missing in the very same area. He returned, retracing paths he once navigated with confidence, now haunted by anticipation. The familiar scent of pine was tinged with an undercurrent of decay, an aroma that the mind recognizes before it consciously processes. The sun barely pierced the canopy, casting fragmented beams on the forest floor, and yet the shadows seemed denser, more deliberate. Every crack of a branch sounded like an announcement, every gust of wind a warning. As he progressed, he noticed signs, subtle disturbances that were not there before, flattened underbrush, faint imprints that did not match human gait, impressions too perfect to be natural. There was intelligence in the way the forest had shifted, as though aware of him, watching, cataloging. A feeling of being manipulated, herded like prey, crept over him, and then he heard it, the soft of a movement around him. Not animal, not wind, but something deliberate, following, waiting, learning. He called out for the hiker, voice trembling despite his effort to remain steady. His words were swallowed by the vastness of the woods. The reply came as silence, yet it was louder than any sound. A presence pressed against him, unseen but undeniable. The hairs on his neck stood, as if the forest itself had reached for him. Shapes flitted across the periphery of his vision, never fully revealed, always retreating when confronted. The mind strains to comprehend what it cannot see, and fear feeds on that incomprehension. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time became distorted as the forest seemed to elongate moments and compress others. A flicker of movement caught his attention. A shadow detaching from the trees, gliding across the clearing. He approached cautiously, boots crunching softly, senses taut. A faint whisper rose on the wind, unintelligible yet unmistakably communicative. Go back, go back. The words were insistent but not threatening, an advisory from a consciousness he could not name. Yet the compulsion to continue inward was stronger, an irresistible lure toward understanding the unseen. And then he saw it, a figure at the edge of the clearing, humanoid but distorted, shifting unnaturally between shapes, the light bending across it in impossible ways. Eyes, if they could be called that, glimmer with intelligence, observing, calculating. Every instinct screamed retreat, but fascination anchored him in place. The figure did not move forward, did not attack. It merely watched, as though gauging his reaction, measuring resolve. And then, without warning, it vanished. The air felt colder, thicker, heavier with unanswered questions. The forest had displayed its will and then withdrawn it, leaving him to wrestle with what he had witnessed. His search continued, yet no human trace was found. The hiker was gone, leaving behind only subtle traces, disturbed leaves, faint footprints that diverged from natural patterns, and a lingering sense of watchfulness. The forest seemed to reshape itself with each step, presenting new paths and erasing old ones. He felt the intelligence behind the environment, a cunning awareness that could outthink him at every turn. The ordinary rules of navigation were meaningless here. The landscape itself was an actor in the ongoing drama of the unseen. Night approached, thick and suffocating. The ranger set up a temporary camp, wary, eyes scanning every shadow, every movement, every whisper of wind. Sleep was impossible, though the body demanded it. Every sound, branch snapping, leaf rustling, distant animal call, became a potential sign of the unknown. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, and the darkness was thick, almost tactile. Somewhere nearby, a sound, a faint scraping, echoed. It was not constant, not rhythmic, but intermittent, deliberate. His pulse raced, every muscle tensed. He felt eyes upon him again, invisible yet undeniable. And yet, despite the fear, there was a curiosity,